Hi everyone. Today I have the delights for you of JetZero. See what they did there? Very clever, wasn't it? So here we go. Let's screen share. And do you know what? Here we go. The first thing I want to do is share something with you that you have likely seen before if you have watched my videos before. But if you haven't, then it's really important. And if you have seen it before, I know you'll understand why I'm reiterating it. If you haven't seen it before, it would be really wonderful if you could pass the information on to other people as well. This is the first global revolution, a report by the Council of the Club of Rome. Um, and it was written by a group of unelected billionaires and bureaucrats, including United Nations bureaucrats, and they get together. And the first time they got together in Rome, so they decided to call themselves the Club of Rome. Imaginative. And so these unelected, underlying the word unelected, billionaires and bureaucrats came up with this document, which says that the common enemy of humanity is man. Okay, so you've heard it before. We're our own worst enemy. But you would think if you were creating a document where you're trying to sort of unite people and bring them together and inspire them to do better and to be better, that you might start with something about the great, massive, wonderful potential that humanity has to do good. That's just my thoughts anyway. The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. Okay, so there you have it. Now they have since produced lots of documents. This one's from December 2018, and it's an emergency paper, and there is a call for action from citizens around the world, apparently, or maybe just from them, for everyone to formulate a plan that will meet suitable, ambitious reduction targets and ensure climate stability. When they're talking about reduction, they're talking about the reduction of carbon dioxide. I'm sure you know that, but just important to say. And here we have a more recent publication by the Club of Rome, 8th of March 2023. And it's saying the same thing. It's appealing to the rest of the world to take the reduction of carbon dioxide seriously, the United Nations in particular. And here we have the United Nations kind of response, if you like, which was the 20th of March 2023, and the Secretary General's video message for a press conference to launch the synthesis report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So they asked for the UN to take it more seriously, and the UN immediately jumped to exactly the height that they asked them to jump to. Now, I mentioned there that it's carbon dioxide that everybody is trying to minimize, and I just wanted to bring you over here. I'm sure you know this already, but something to maybe remind people about. Photosynthesis is a process by which carbon dioxide plants sort of absorb carbon dioxide, and they use it along with sunlight to produce glucose, a form of food energy for themselves. And the byproduct of this is oxygen, which of course we humans breathe, and so do other animals breathe. So there is always that correlation between carbon dioxide, plants and humans, that used to be something that I think people really fundamentally understood, and I'm not entirely sure that the knowledge has been passed down to the generations that have come after mine, possibly not yours. I don't know, you're probably younger than me, most people are. Okay, so here we've got NASA, and they are saying that Earth's global average surface temperature in 2020 statistically tied with 2016 as the hottest year on record. Now, although it's saying as the hottest year on record, first you have to know that the records only began about 150 years ago. You need to think about it in the context of there being glacial periods and hot periods, and that the Earth has always undulated between these two extremes. And think about to what extent does the carbon dioxide that humans are producing influence these extremes that are occurring anyway. So there we're saying that the temperature actually didn't rise over those 4 years. And here we have another paper which they amend at the top because they don't really like the outcome of it. Why did Earth's surface temperature stop rising in the past decade? And this is talking about, I think, 1998 to 2012. And so during that time, there wasn't any warming. The temperature didn't go up. And again, just something for you to know. Here we have an article by the Daily Mail. It's 2013, and what it's referencing is a leaked United Nations report, which reveals that the world's temperature hasn't risen for the last 15 years, and the scientists were asked to cover that fact up, because if people were aware of it, then they might not be so quick to jump on board with the carbon dioxide interpretation of global warming and the necessity for us to change our lives drastically in order to take better care of the world. So that's all of that. Now the interesting thing is, so I want to bring that in then to the JetZero document. And probably if you can see here, you notice that I'm on page 55 of 83. So on page 55 of 83, we address non-CO2 emissions. So the rest of the document is all talking about the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions in the aviation industry, how that has to be achieved by 2050, how there are intermittent targets at 2030 and 2040, and 5-year reviews planned along the way. But the non-CO2 apparently greenhouse gas causing byproduct of the aviation industry is referenced down here on page 55, where they say that much of our strategy focuses on how we reduce CO2 emissions from aviation. However, we also recognize that aviation has non-CO2 climate impacts which need to be addressed. There are large uncertainties over the magnitude of non-CO2 impacts on climate. Recent scientific evidence suggests the best estimate is that roughly 2/3 of aviation's historical climate impacts are due to non-CO2, and that whilst non-CO2 emissions can have both warming and cooling effects, the net warming rate is likely to be around 3 times that of CO2. So what you've got there is an admission that carbon dioxide is not actually even, if this all were to be true, that humans are causing climate change, then rather than perhaps just adding to something which is already going to occur anyway, and in a very, very minimal way. If this is all the case, the science that they're presenting, then they're saying that, CO2 is the lesser problem here. And yet CO2 seems to be the thing that we are going to deal with. So then you ask yourself, well, why? Why would they deal with carbon first? And the answer really is just that they're creating a market. They're creating a market so that they can make money out of huge swathes of land being covered in forestry or any kind of vegetation, and they can sell the sort of plots, if you like, of the land, not actually selling the land, but they're selling the value of the land to what's the word for it? Compensate or cancel out carbon emissions. So if you look over here in Scotland, there is a bit of concern because this is driving land prices up, as you would expect. If you look down here, it just explains that nearly 560,000 credits produced by Scottish projects have been sold to date. Each credit permits a firm to emit 1 ton of CO2 because the equivalent amount has supposedly already been absorbed by a Scottish woodland peat project or peat project. And just so that just because it's interesting, the by far the biggest buyer is an American firm called FleetCor, which sells fuel cards to the haulage industry. It's bought nearly 390,000 credits. But they're also being bought up by Shell and all of the companies which produce fossil fuels. So really, all they're doing is they are swapping their fossil fuel market for the carbon market. And they can't do that unless there is a carbon market. So here we go back to JetZero, delivering net zero aviation by 2050. And I'm not going to read all of it to you. I have read most of it. So I say that because I've scanned some of it because it's very, very repetitive. However, I've tried to pick out the bits that I think are probably most pertinent to the point that I am trying to make. I realize that I am trying to make a point, so therefore, I'm not necessarily an unbiased opinion, but there you go. Take it or leave it. And here we have just a diagram just so that you can see they've got very, very clear objectives for what people, what is supposed to be achieved and when it's supposed to be achieved by. We're committing the UK aviation sector to reaching net zero or JetZero by 2050. The UK has demonstrated its commitment to net zero through the Climate Change Act, where we have pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 100% by 2050. We're clear that aviation must play its part in achieving this goal, and through the implementation of the approach and policies in this strategy, we will achieve JetZero, net zero emissions from aviation by 2050. Now, it's really interesting there as well when you think about the fact that we've already looked further down the document and we have seen that non-carbon dioxide emitting sort of byproducts of the aviation industry are greater than the carbon dioxide problem. This says that it's going to wipe it all out completely. Well, I don't really see how it can do that if the thing that it's going to sort of deal with is only a third of the problem. In addition, we are setting an earlier target for UK domestic flights to reach net zero by 2040. They've got a strategic framework for delivery and a trajectory against which we will measure progress. So the measurement of things is also huge, and you should know that because it's useful to understand really what they want to do is they want to measure everything so that they can it's not really because they care enormously about everything getting better. What they care about is being able to gamble like you would on the stock market on the predicted outcomes of whatever the measurement data is going to say in the future. So you've got a carbon economy and you've got a data economy. And so carrying on through the document, as a responsible government, we will need to regularly review the sector's progress and adapt our approach depending on progress made. And then it goes on to talk about monitoring again against the trajectory. But the point about the responsible government needing to regularly review the sector's progress and adapt their approach depending on the progress made is really important, because they do intend to review how close they are to their targets regularly. And if they're not meeting them, they can just halt aviation. So, for instance, if by 2040 we haven't managed to make it so that all internal UK flights are non-carbon dioxide emitting, or they can, the carbon dioxide that's being emitted can be offset, then they can just stop. They can just stop flights internally, and the thing that you also have to consider is that the flights that are going to be able to afford to offset their carbon dioxide emissions are going to be from the companies which have a lot of money. So you're not talking necessarily about the budget airlines, which we the people use for our 1 week in the sun. They're likely to not be able to afford to offset their carbon emissions, and therefore probably go bust. So that's, I know it's not good, is it? But I mean, it's better to know and conceptualize it and sort of begin to talk to other people about it than to not know at all. The vast majority of the UK's aviation emissions comes from international flights. So I've highlighted that there because I've talked about how there is a benchmark 2040 for internal flights being non-carbon dioxide emitting. And there is also a benchmark for international flights, which is 2050. And once again, if they don't hit it, they can just stop the flights. And I think that it's highly likely that what they're going to do in 2050 is say, oh dear, we're going to have to pause because we're awfully close to it. But, we haven't actually managed to secure or create or the technology or sufficient amounts of fuel to make this happen. And that pause, I would say, is something that will not be revisited. I think what will happen is the elite will still be able to fly in their private jets because they can offset their carbon, but the industry for the common man will fold. Obviously, that is just my opinion, but I don't really see that people who are trying to encourage 20-minute neighborhoods where the neighborhood is like it's a radius, it's 10 minutes to the perimeter and 10 minutes back, are likely to be keen for all of us to fly and travel the world. Here it's talking about through these networks and collaboration on key global regulatory challenges, we will work to share best practice and help influence the development of future global standards. So they want global standards. Again, this is about a one world government globalizing everything and making it so that, sovereignty is a thing of the past. Here we have that they're going to set up they've already set up in the UK a JetZero Council, and to accelerate progress on the objectives, they're going to create a steering committee. I always think you should take the word steering very seriously, because it does mean what it says. And the types of the ways that they're going to one of the ways that they're going to try and reduce carbon emissions is through sustainable aviation fuel. So I was interested to find out what is sustainable aviation fuel, because obviously what is it made of, and mostly apparently it's it comes from cooking oil and biomass. So okay, so what's cooking oil made of? And we've got that it's from fruits like avocado and olive trees, or nuts, walnut and peanut and seeds, canola, rapeseed in particular, and sunflower. So what's the effect or what's the impact of trying to mass produce cooking oil? On industrial scale farms, trees and plants are often grown as monocrops, which you'd think would be what would be happening. which is the practice of growing a single crop on the same section of land year after year. This type of agriculture kills the soil, so synthetic fertilizers must be applied to provide nutrients for the plants. Obviously, somebody is going to be selling the fertilizer. In addition, monocrops are susceptible to being wiped out by pests and taken over by plant pests like weeds. So massive amounts of pesticides are used in an attempt to prevent these problems. Again, there you go. There's another market. So that doesn't really sound terribly great, does it? You know, and also, again, you can imagine that huge amounts of land would be required, and the value of that land would also be inflated because, you know, of its potential use. Here we have like a little segment by the BBC Bite Size, so it's actually for kids, but it's useful. It's just talking about what biomass is, and here they actually admit that biomass energy. I'm going to play it. You won't be able to hear it, but I will just kind of tell you what it's saying. So here we go. Biomass is still burned and it still releases CO2, which is apparently bad for the environment. They can't say whether it's clean or not because it depends on the use. You take some wood and you make it into pellets, and then you burn the pellets, then you're releasing carbon dioxide, which is the same that you would release when you're burning fossil fuels. So there you go. Again, and as well, biomass, what does it mean? It means sort of something that's either living or something that was recently living. Hopefully they are talking about plants. Who knows? But you know, even then, are you going to intensively farm, you know, this kind of sort of wood that, you know, you grow it, you know, it grows quickly over a 10-year period, and then you harvest it all and turn it all into wood chips. Again, you know, all of these things need to be considered. Are they actually better for the world and for the people in it? Okay, so we did sustainable aviation fuel, and I've talked to you about the markets. It says here creating successful carbon markets, and investing in greenhouse gas removals. You know, that's definitely part of the plan. Influencing consumers. Now here it's interesting. It says preserving the ability for people to fly while supporting consumers to make sustainable aviation travel choices. When it says preserving, the implication there is that you know, that flying is something that can be taken away from you. So it's not a right that is inherently yours. It is something that somebody else has providence over, and they are trying to make it so that you can keep it. But you know, if things don't go well, then you know it can be removed from you. It's not it is no longer yours. The freedom no longer belongs to you. The choice is no longer yours. So here we go. I know it's so much fun, isn't it? I really do apologize. It's not me doing it, by the way. So, you know, can't hold me accountable. I just want you all to know. Here we go. We're working with the ATI industry and academia to establish a method for quantifying the potential emissions savings of future research and development projects for aircraft technology developments to allow us to assess the sustainability benefits for the aviation sector and prioritize the funding of projects most likely to deliver clean growth. So they are looking to quantify things. So again, it's all about being able to measure things so that you can compare things. It's all data. And let's just see if there's anything else that I need to tell you. That's the sustainable aviation fuel, and we will implement a sustainable aviation fuel mandate, which will come into force in 2025. It's interesting, this word mandate really wasn't something that you heard about pre-corona. Now it just seems to be bandied about here and there as if, you know, it's an absolutely normal thing to do. The SAF mandate will set an obligation on fuel suppliers to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of aviation fuel by the equivalent of at least 10% SAF use by 2030. So that's a 2030 target. They have, I think I already mentioned, but just in case I didn't, they want to review it every 5 years, and that is problematic for us because, of course, if we haven't hit targets by, by those times, they'll pause things. This intermittent sort of progress towards, everybody being trapped in their own country. Sorry for that not being terribly eloquent, but I think you know what I mean. And here we go, zero emission flight, Fly Zero project, government funded. This project concluded that whilst continued research was needed, there is a viable technical and commercial case for the use of liquid hydrogen as an aviation fuel in long-haul aviation. I'm not going to go into hydrogen. It's not my speciality. I just thought it was really important for you to know that that is a component part of this discussion. And 5-year plan, and let me just double check. I think we're almost there. There's the reference to the markets, just so that you know. Really is carbon markets where airline operators can obtain and surrender allowances are now well established. So it's already happening. Carbon markets can provide a mechanism for decarbonization to occur where it is most cost effective to do so, and provide a useful price signal for investors. This will be especially beneficial for the aviation sector and other hard to abate sectors that are likely to have emissions by 2050. So they're kind of admitting that they don't actually think that it is possible. And so that's, where what I said comes into play, that things will happen, like people will no longer be able to fly, and that they only the rich will be able to achieve it. There was another point there, but I can't remember what it was. So let's move on. An international approach to carbon markets, for example, by working through organizations such as the ICAO, is required to help maximize value for money and maintain competitiveness and attractive investment and attract investment. Sorry. So strategic objectives, the 5-year thing, we've already done that. And again, that reference to preserving the ability for people to fly, that's their sort of objective, as if, that's not something that should just be taken for granted anyway. This is their public attitudes tracker, showing that 85% of people are concerned about climate change, and 2 out of 5, so 39%, of respondents agree or strongly agree that they would pay more for flight tickets to reduce the environmental and or noise impact of flying. So that shows you one way that they're going to go. The prices are going to go up, so that they're going to be prohibitive to a lot of people. 43% of UK adults surveyed said they are willing to limit their flying in order to reduce their carbon contribution to climate change. Again, that shows you the direction that they're intending to go in. An aviation passenger's journey includes more than the flight itself. So really what they're talking about here, as far as you're concerned, is that it will be public transport only to the airport, which will be fun with all your suitcases, except you don't need to worry because you're not going anywhere. No luggage allowance for you. And that's more about monitoring. And this is where we get to the bit that it's my premise that it should have been at the beginning, which is the non-CO2 emitting, the non-CO2 emissions from aviation, which is not really getting a mention until page 55. Okay, well, my lovelies, I think you and I have done really well here. I think we'll hop back and say hello to each other before we say goodbye to each other. So stop the share. Hello, there you are again. I hope that wasn't too boring. It's fascinating in its own way, but obviously the delivery matters, and I don't know whether I got it spot on. But even if I didn't, and you don't want to share this, then please, perhaps, if you see the way that I approached it in order to try and sort of break down the components that might be of interest to people, that might be a way to try and get conversations going with, your average person in your life. Anyway, I love you. Take care, my sweets. Bye bye.